guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a semi-hydroponic repot, and I'm also going to be giving a 3.5-month update on another Phalaenopsis that I transitioned. So I'm getting a lot of questions from you guys on updates, so I'm hoping that I will show you me repotting this Harlequin orchid that I got for my birthday. It's starting to fade a little bit, and I'm also going to take the opportunity for this repot to show you a very similar orchid that I repotted just 3.5 months ago, so you could see how it's doing. So this Phalaenopsis orchid I repotted back in September, very end of September, and it's thrown out double spikes. It's blooming. I am so thrilled with how this orchid is doing. It gave me 2 different spikes. I've got 6 flowers on one and another one that's still opening up. But this was my first Phalaenopsis that I transitioned over into semi-hydro. And I'm very, very pleased with how it's doing. This is my first double spike as well, so I think the grow method is doing really well. So I'll walk you through exactly how I did that and talk through the repot with you guys. So 3.5 months ago, I repotted the Stars Fiona. This orchid was overgrowing its pot. As you could see, there were roots outside of that pot. It was set up in a sphagnum moss mix quite tightly. The leaves were all very healthy. The bottom leaves looked like they were going to dry out at some point, which they eventually did. But this orchid was in a very, very tight sphagnum moss mix. I remember that I took out so much moss that I was just like, I don't know how more roots haven't died. But when I repotted this orchid, it surprised me with a very nice root system. It looked really nice. So I think the transition into semi-hydroponics went well with this because it was already in a quite moist system. So the roots were pretty healthy. There were some that were dead inevitably, so I cut them off. And ultimately, I really did not have too many issues. I potted it up into leca and I soaked it into a mixture of kelp, which I normally do for my semi-hydroponic repots. And yeah, it had a decent root system. The roots were quite vigorous despite being in that sphagnum moss mix. And what I did was I just potted it up into that same sort of leca setup, and I put all of the aerial roots inside of the pot so that they can get more moisture. So the way that I'm repotting this Phalaenopsis is the same way that I'm going to be planning on repotting my other Phalaenopsis. So I just used straight up leca. I have a wick that I have all the way to the top, and I just filled around the pot. I also ended up topping this up with a layer of pebbles to combat the dry top layer that leca typically has, and I had no issues with this. So after making sure that the leca was quite down tightly, this is the final outcome. After I repotted it, I didn't expect it to bloom at all since it had bloomed already for the year. And this is exactly what everything looked like. So everything was nice and tight. The wick was up high, and I had some aerial roots in there, which I tucked in, which I was expecting to die, given that a change in environment for the roots tends to kill them off. So I'm going to be showing you 3.5 months later exactly how that root system looks. So fast forward to January 17th, 2021. We've got 2 spikes and we've got a very healthy orchid in this semi-hydroponic system. So the leaves, 2 of the leaves did fall off from the bottom, and we've got new leaves that have come in. 2 new leaves grew in. Some of those aerial roots did die off, so that was expected. They started molding when I put it in, but I flush very regularly. Now new roots have taken over the pot. As you can see, some roots have actually grown through the slits on the bottom. So, and the roots that are growing in are very, very thick. So I'm finding that it's having no problem going down into the medium. And there's a combination of some roots that have died off, as you could see, and new roots. But so far, the new roots have been extremely vigorous, and they've been growing really, really nicely. And I keep this in a water reservoir with a nutrient solution of kelp usually, and I think that's what's really helped with getting this double spike. It's been really, really happy in this setup. Now, this orchid has a different setup. It's in a decorative container with pebbles on top. I've shown you how to water this a couple of videos ago, but I want to give it a repot just because some of these are fading, and I think it's time to just give it some fresh medium. It's also sort of a pain in the ass to water since it's got these pebbles on the top of it. Though what I've noticed is that there are some nodes that are a little bit swelled, so we might be able to get a chance at more flower spikes. So let's get this out of the container and I'll show you what we are dealing with here. So I've taken the pebbles off and I've taken it out of its container. It's set up a little bit differently than the other Phalaenopsis orchid in that it's in a system that's a little bit drier. So what I'm doing right now is I'm inspecting the flower spikes. So there's a couple of different things we can do when repotting a phal. In some cases, you can cut the spike at the base, and that'll force the orchid to grow vegetatively. Or you can cut at a node. You can basically cut to force the plant to try to flower again. Now, some folks don't like that either because they think that it's really exhausting the orchid. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the flower spikes to see what I'm going to do. And as I'm looking at the flower spikes, I'm noticing one of the nodes has a growth coming in. So it's trying to push out another spike. So instead of cutting this at the base, which I was thinking of doing, I think I'm going to try for another branching flower spike. Either is fine. Folks have their different preferences. Some people even leave the flower spikes on fully and let the plant do its thing. I usually cut at the base, but seeing the node, I will try to keep them on. So I've removed the bark and I am trimming off the dead roots. So far, this orchid is in really good shape. I think for being in a decorative container, it was set up for success. So what I've done was I actually had this footage and it did not save. So apologies for that, but I cut right above the node that I saw. And for the other spike, just to have some uniformity, I've also cut right around another node to see if I will get another spike. I usually cut at the base, but hey, I'll take another set of blooms right now. It'll be nice to see this bloom again. So I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did with my other Phalaenopsis. I've got a clear pot inside of a decorative pot, and I've got a wick that I've moved all the way to the top. I've soaked my leca with some clean kelp, and I've actually added some lava rock to this mix. So this is some leftover mix from when I repotted some of my Mendacious orchids a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did with my Phalaenopsis orchid, and I think the biggest thing with leca is just making sure that there's no massive air gaps there, as that will get in the way of the wicking. So I've rinsed everything out. This one might act a little bit differently since it came from a different environment. It was in bark and not sphagnum moss, so it was a little drier. So I'm curious to see if these roots are going to transition easily or if there's going to be some die-off. It wouldn't surprise me if there's die-off. It's not uncommon. It's something that is normal. But the new root system will adapt to this new growing system. The biggest thing with these repots, and this is something that I learned from Nina over at Ninja Orchids, is that you have to make sure to flush these orchids to keep oxygenation high in the pot. And then also when you flush regularly, any rotten roots, that's just going to be flushed out and all that decomposing media will get taken care of. So what I've done was I've filled around with leca and I've topped this orchid off with a layer of non-wicking pebbles. I've used the same pebbles that it had with the decorative container. And as you can see, I've kept the spikes on. I'm planning for these orchids to get a new offshoot and bloom again. So we'll see how that does. I typically cut at the base, but I want to see what happens here. I usually don't do this, but since it's early in the winter and these bloom around this time, I think it's fine. I'd love to have a few phals in bloom for now. I took the tops of the spikes and I've actually sealed it off with cinnamon so that we don't have any fungal infections. And I made sure to keep this medium very tight in here so that it continues to wick up. So we'll see how this does. I think it'll be nicely hydrated in this new system, and I'm really, really excited. So I'll keep you guys posted. As you saw, I'm very pleased with the first Phalaenopsis orchid that I transitioned over into semi-hydro. It gave me double spikes, and I think it's very happy to have a nutrient solution within a water reservoir where it's getting fed all the time. So we'll see if this continues to grow, and I will keep you posted on the monthly updates on this one. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more orchid updates. Also follow me on Instagram where I post more regular updates there. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye.